Um. Oh, well, we're streaming. So, welcome everybody.
good.
Here's a podcast theme. Hey everybody, welcome to All the Way Down. I'm Invictus Knox. This is Dash Retro. How you doing, Dash?
I'm Dash. I'm doing good. It looks like it says 32, but is this 33 or 32?
This is 33, and I'm glad you mentioned that because that's a perfect transition to talk about our, totally planned transition to talk about our subjects tonight, which is actually, I've been playing a game called Vermintide 2. It's Warhammer actually. Warhammer Vermintide 2. I have always been a Warhammer fan. I have never been a big Warhammer Vermintide player since I've never really got into it. I'm playing the second one now, and it's like very, very good, but it's got some weird things about it.
I'm not big into RTSs. Outside of growing up playing a lot of StarCraft.
It's a first-person
But-
shooter game.
What? I was gonna say I've always heard Warhammer is talked about quite positively as far as
Oh.
RTSs go, but so Vermintide is a first-person shooter.
Well, Warhammer in general is a big fictional universe. The game got its start in the tabletop era, kind of like, not RTS like video games, but basically like tabletop. Basically, you know how an RTS game kind of flows, but as if it were tabletop.
Yeah.
A lot of the games obviously kind of went in the RTS manner, but they made first-person shooter games. They made there's like Space Hulk, where there's Battlefleet Gothica, where there's actually starship combat. There's lots of stuff in the Warhammer. That's just 40K too. This what we're talking about here is actually just Warhammer. I hesitate to call it Warhammer Fantasy because apparently they concluded the fantasy universe and made something new called, I don't even remember what it's called. I've been out of touch with the fantasy universe for a while, but essentially it's old world versus far future and space, all that shit.
What? Like it's all of it together at once?
But essentially it's it's there's Warhammer and Warhammer 40K. Warhammer 40K is
Okay, yeah.
Warhammer 40,000. It's the 41st millennium, essentially.
Yeah, and to a moron like me, it's like Warhammer is Warcraft and Warhammer 40K is StarCraft.
Yeah, but in the release orders that those games came out, the Blizzard stuff came after.
Well, yeah, but
basically for the universe, yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially, Vermintide is the idea that you're in the fantasy universe, so old school medieval wizardry, swords, shields, all that shit. Except with Warhammer's very unique take on the universe, etc. So Vermintide is the collective, essentially, story-wise, it's the conspiracy come to fruition of there's this underground race of rat men, and it's this big thing that just, you're crazy if you've seen anything bigger than a rat, out in the field or in your village house, whatever, it's just a tall tale. But no, these actually are a race of rat men called the Skaven, and they have teamed up with some of the forces of chaos in the local area to bring about the end, the end times of their overworld, above ground, overlords. So without giving too much away of the story, they essentially, well, I don't want to give away too much of the story, but imagine if Left 4 Dead could be a more fast-paced game using less fast-paced weaponry. And what I mean by that...
I was going to say, give us a little bit of the hook on the story. What's the hook?
Well, the rats are going to take over, and they're going to eat everything, and they're going to destroy everything, and they're going to kill you.
Who are you if you're not rat people?
You are one of 4 different characters, and that's actually where this game gets good for me. So there's characters rather than classes, and each of those characters has a class to pick from it. So it kind of takes me back to an older game I played, one of the last MMOs I really loved, which was Warhammer Online Age of Reckoning, because this game kind of takes the class system, almost, halfway takes the class system from an MMO and throws it into this kind of Left 4 Dead combat swarm style melee or ranged combat shit in general. So you are either it's fucking something. God damn it. Victor Hubert or something. I can't remember. Victor Saltspire is he's either a witch hunter, a mercenary. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get these classes wrong because I only just started playing recently. Or not a heretic, a zealot. You know, classic like. He's a really religious guy essentially, and he could also be a warrior priest as a DLC character. So he's the kind of guy who's like sheltered in. He's the Sigmarite, which is their deity essentially in this universe. He's the zealot. He's the crazy religious guy, and you can kind of do what you will with all 4 of his classes. Like they kind of spread 4 subclasses across these 4 characters for whatever role you'd want to do. Like one can be like a ranged DPS role, one can be a tanking role, one can be a support role essentially, or however support works in this game. And in each of the races that you have, like I mentioned Victor Saltspire. You also have Sienna Fuegonasis, which I fucking hate her name because she's a fire wizard. And how the hell do you get a cheesier name than Fuego? Anyway, she's really cool because fire wizards work in a badass way. I'll get to that in a second. Then there's also the dwarf, which, damn, I'm really bad at remembering names. It's like fucking Barum or some shit like that. I don't remember. It starts with a B. Their names really aren't important, but you kind of like... There's a lot of story that goes on in the dialogue back and forth between these characters, but their names are so unimportant that I just don't remember them. But yeah, there's the little dwarf, and he can be, a hunter. He can be a tank. Like, it's called an Iron Breaker in the Warhammer universe. He'll be a slayer, which is a badass kind of little dwarf. And then you can be an engineer, which he has like this sweet fucking steam-powered Gatling gun. It's sick. And then also there's the main character, which is Marcus. That was his name, Marcus Kruber. And he's like where the Empire has the Empire is represented by Sienna and Victor. I think. Well, he's obviously with the Empire, but Marcus is more of a. I want to say he's a Bretonnian knight. Bretonnian, which is like in this universe. It's kind of like if England and France were a kind of combined culture force, whereas the Empire is like if the Holy German Roman Empire, whatever, were to expand and become much bigger, etc. And then shoot, did I name all the characters that you play? Yeah, I did. So anyway, there's these 4 characters. You can play them 4 different ways. You unlock them in different ways. Either you buy them as DLC or you unlock them. But you get 2 as you unlock. As you level up, but 1 that you get DLC. And the actual characters themselves play pretty differently, and they play very much the same at the same time. And that's kind of my biggest gripe with this game so far, is while the characters and classes are like visually very different, you have the freedom to play them all the same, which I like and don't like, because I don't know. There's something about limitations to a class that make you, we've had this conversation before. Limitations will force you to think creatively on your feet, etc. But essentially, you can combat however you want. It's just your class is the only thing that changes with your class is your F key ability, which is like your special ability, and then the specific perks or stat boosts you get to to like. Say if I was Sienna, who's a fire wizard, she's going to be mostly doing ranged combat, fire damage, etc. But she has a character class where it's called Unchained, and she essentially just wears all this heavy iron armor. It looks like the most like ridiculous, evil-looking medieval shit, and then she just focuses on melee weapons. And she's got this thing where like she has a meter called Overcharge, so all of her classes work around the overcharge meter. So like in one, her main class will be like, the more overcharge you have, the faster spell casting speed you'll have, or you'll cool down after. You'll automatically also cool your meter down after 6 seconds. And the reason that's important is because if your meter is almost to the last portion of the bar, it'll start glowing red with a skull, and that's because you're about to blow yourself up. That's kind of like the give and take of this kind of class. It's like in the Warhammer universe, the humans were entrusted by the elves. The only magic they were entrusted with, because they didn't want them to overcome them, was fire magic. So that's why she's a fire wizard, and kind of that's like, I guess elves hate humans in this universe too, because this, of course, the only magic they would teach them is magic that they could kill themselves with. So anyway, that's fun to deal with, but it's like a cool thing to do where you're not just clicking and then, oh, there's some damage over there, I'll click over here, now there's some damage over here. No, it's actually something that keeps you, it's a balancing act, so it's keeping you on your toes while you're also combating like hundreds and hundreds of rats.
Yeah, so the first thing that you compared this to was Left 4 Dead, and so it's generally a co-op shooter where you're just fighting hordes of enemies.
Yeah, there's no versus. Like, it's a multiplayer game for sure, but it's all like you're in a party with people against the hordes.
And so what's the goal? Because like in Left 4 Dead, you're trying to get from point A to
point B. Yep,
it's the same thing here.
It's basically like that, except with this you have I would say, in my limited experience with Left 4 Dead 2, and much less so Back 4 Blood, I would say this game has a lot more objectives in the level. So you have to go to different parts of the level, sometimes multiple times. So you have to backtrack. There's areas where you'll create an event where, of course, you're gonna just trigger a swarm, and you have to combat that. Or there'll be sometimes the game will be a real dick and throw like a big meaty not boss, but like something that'll fuck you up if you were currently running away from the horde. And so the way that the game works, from getting from point A to point B is a waystone that a magician in your home keeps open, I want to say. And the waystone creates this like big light bubble around it. So as soon as you get to the waystone and you're in that bubble, you can't be hurt by enemies. They can't go in the bubble. But your teammates, if they're still outside, the level won't automatically like end. You either have to go back out for them or you abandon them. And yeah, as the Left 4 Dead kind of name implies, it's present here.
And that's just like in Left 4 Dead when there's the whatchamacallit, the exit. I can't remember what they called the exit, the safe room.
Safe room.
Like,
yep.
Yeah, you close the door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just like Left 4 Dead, it's also got all those kind of different, kinds of character bosses. Like, Left 4 Dead had the Hunter, which I remember, which was the super annoying fucking hoodie-wearing asshole that would climb the walls in the alleyways. You kind of have that here, except this rat's just known as an assassin rat. You'll hear him in your headphones, left to right, go stereo in and out, so you can't really picture where he's coming from until you see him. And usually when you see him, he's already kind of flying at you. And God damn it, dude. It's like a rule of thumb with this game for me at this point. Maybe it's just because I'm not good at this point. But like, my rule of thumb is now, if you are the person who sees the fucking assassin rat, you're the person who everyone is going to have to come save from the assassin rat. Like, no matter what you do, unless you have like pin perfect aim at the right second to kill that thing as it's flying at you, you're going to get jumped and you're going to be pinned, and you really can't do anything because it's just going to stab you until you're dead. And
right.
Yeah.
So you said that the different characters have different classes with very different abilities.
Yep.
Is there anything besides that? I mean, does that do enough to separate the game from Left 4 Dead, do you think?
Yes, for me. Because it's got a lot. It's got a lot more going on with the combat, I think, than Left 4 Dead does. Well, at least the old school Left 4 Dead, it's like, oh, okay, I could just pick up the M16, or I'll use a submachine gun, or I'll just use a pistol, or whatever. It's like there's just way more depth to it than that in this. However, my biggest gripe with it is that while all the characters do play. Well, they can play the same, like I said. Their abilities are different enough to distinguish them from each other, like mechanically. The skill trees that you follow are like the same. Like, maybe it's because I don't know the game enough, and of course I haven't gotten a character to level 20 yet. So I have heard that the beginning skill tree abilities pretty much are the same across all characters, and that's like the first ability in like the first column, in the first row, you have three choices. It's like it's either going to be staggering enemies will grant you temporary health, or killing enemies with like a killing blow will grant you temporary health, or when you use a potion or anything like that that recovers your health, nearby teammates will get about 20% of that and healing themselves as well. So it's like every class I've played so far that I've tried to, give any amount of time, they all have that. So it's like, I don't know. But I've heard for something like the Warrior Priest, okay, I'll get into the way the Warrior Priest works. And the way I like this, the reason I like this class is it's a class that's technically a support class, not really heal or tanking, although they can tank if they want. It's a class where you're kind of trying to do as much damage around you as you can in order to provide the most gray health to yourself. And with the skill tree enhancements later on, I think the idea is that gray health can be transferred to teammates as well. So your idea is to either spec yourself to go stun or stagger, or killing, or some other thing. Like maybe the next tree point down from like the potion thing will be like, well, you just have 7% better better attack power. It's like, it's kind of a throwaway stat. It's like you could either do the math better, or you could have this cool ability that lets you do this and all this. And it's like, the skill trees are not my favorites so far. But I did discover that you don't have to pay anything to respec your character. So like if I wanted to tank real quick as this character, I could just go hero select, go to this person, change it over, and then go to this the inventory, go to the skill tree, and just click, put it the way I want. It's fine for that, but I kind of wish there was like, I don't know, like a favorites menu, like here's how I want this build. I'll push this button and it specs me that way. I don't want to have to click every one. Yeah. There's lots of stuff like that it could use some polish, but
yeah, I think World of Warcraft had something like that. It was like in that game you did have to pay in-game currency to respec your character, but at some point they did introduce like dual specking where there was a button press you could do that would just flip you between two that you had preset or something.
That was after I left.
Yeah, this was quite a bit later, but yeah, I'm a little surprised it doesn't have something like that.
Oh, dude, I remember that too. That was a miserable time if you were a WoW player, like especially me as a warrior. So I played an arms warrior, so I was a big burst damage dealer kind of character. But late game, if you were a warrior and you weren't a tank, like you weren't shit to anybody. So I couldn't deal with the people who would try to force me to play the way they wanted to play. And at that point, like you said, there's actually real monetary consequence to being forced to being played the way you don't want to play. It's like that gold, dude. There was like I guess I'm showing my age a little bit here, but there was a solid point in time where gold farming in World of Warcraft was a legitimate career choice for a lot of people, especially in China. Like, it was a meme, but like it was real. You actually had people sleeping under desks while their worker mate would be awake on their shift, just doing the same patterns, like almost speedrunning WoW, speedrunning daily quests to just farm gold for you to buy. But yeah, dude, I couldn't stand that. So seeing that I didn't have to pay money or even pay in-game currency that you have to buy with real money for cosmetics and shit. And that's another can of worms too. The cosmetics are not worth it in this game, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Because Warhammer is like, that's the game where you can legit have as much fun in an army painter. You can have just as much fun in the same amount of time as actually playing it. So, but anyway,
I didn't mean to derail you into World of Warcraft off of
no, that's fine.
So as you're playing, you said that there's a skill tree. You mentioned that a couple characters were unlockable, but then another one was DLC. Is this game, is this a battle pass situation?
No. So how it works is no matter who you pick, you start a character at level 0. And you don't get the next character to play until you've gotten your first character to level 10, I think it is. And then you unlock the second character class from that at level 15, I want to say, which I actually really like because it forces you to play the base character to understand the game before you go playing. Like, okay, for example, I'll go back to the Fire Wizard because I love playing the Fire Wizard. Her Battle Wizard class is the one you start out with. That's the one where you automatically start venting your heat, your overheat meter after 6 seconds of not using it. So say I get to full meter and I don't want to blow up and hurt myself and waste a potion or possibly get left behind. I can just switch to my melee weapon and just start hitting fuckers. So that's nice. Or you can do what you're supposed to do and hit the R key, kind of like reload, you know? Except in this game, R is you physically venting your heat out of your meter and taking that as a chip damage to your HP. So you can, and I have killed myself accidentally by just hitting the R key at 0 health. So, like, it's good that you're forced to play the Battle Wizard first, because the next step up is the Pyromancer. And that's the one that is a little bit less, you know, hybridized. Like, you could do more melee stuff with the Battle Wizard than you could the Pyromancer, mechanics-wise. Gameplays-wise, you do whatever the fuck you want. But, like, with the Pyromancer, she doesn't have the ability to vent after 6 seconds. So you have to deal with your meter. You have to be on top of your meter being, you know, near the top but not low, because her passive ability as a Pyromancer is the more meter she has, the higher crit chance she has. So instead of just, you know, saving you, you could be doing way more damage if you've built up the, you know, the wherewithal to not blow yourself up first with the Battle Wizard. So I like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was worried about the Battle Pass thing, just because of what you were saying about the DLC and stuff. But all right, well.
And you also asked, like, what do you do? Like, okay, so it's pretty obvious in Left 4 Dead, you know, get the fuck out, survive, you know. But this is Warhammer, and you're a group of 4 actual badasses. So you're not trying to escape. You're trying to run. Generally, when you're trying to escape, it's because you just did something to royally fuck up a lot of the enemy. So there's like a lot of satisfaction that goes into it. And actually, one thing I did want to say about this game is because, you know how when this is kind of a weird connection. You know how when the Battlefield series introduced what is the Dice engine or the Frostbite engine, and like all of a sudden all of the fucking environments became a lot more destructible than they ever used to be in a video game. That feeling when I was playing Battlefield is the same feeling I get when I just, like, if I have a conflagration staff as the Fire Wizard, charge it up. And this staff, she has a bunch of different staffs that do different kinds of fire damage in ways that it deals it. This staff is like essentially charge it up and it's just a flamethrower. So just like fucking burning, and the fire looks great too. Great graphics. It's a very pretty game. And just toasting like scores of rats is like that same level of satisfaction. But contrary to like Left 4 Dead, or really any kind of co-op game, any co-op experience, this has been one of the few, this could just be me being a Warhammer nerd, it probably is, but this is one of the few games where I've not wanted to be on voice comms with my friends who are playing with. Like, I don't want to play with people randos, but I totally will, because this is one of those games where, like, randos' skill level matters, but I totally just want to hear the dialogue between the characters. Like, the writing between characters isn't the best, but it's Warhammer, and it's a cheesy universe anyway, so you kind of just go along with it. But it's to the point where it adds a whole element to the game that you didn't think you'd appreciate. I know Left 4 Dead had, you know, back and forth banter between characters, but this is like almost the level of engagement between like the Uncharted games, like the characters in the Uncharted games, and how well the dialogue between characters is there. It's engaging, and it's fun to just see why each one of these 4 characters talks funny or says funny shit or weird shit. That's pretty charming about it. So it's a game that you can absolutely veg out to, I guess is my point, while also being a game that Recruit is the lowest difficulty, is pretty boring at this point, because that's the veg out mode. If you just want to veg out, you can just honestly, Recruit's a little bit more boring because I wish there were same difficulty but more rats. Like that's where you want to get the focus in. But you can go to veteran difficulty, you can go to champion. I think is the hardest one, and there's one in between that. But they're what actually make the game fun. And I don't find myself saying that about games very often, where the difficulty setting actually makes it good. And I mean, I know a lot of games on easy mode are boring, and that's why I always play things on normal. But this is the one game where it's like it absolutely changes up the strategy between difficulties. Because say I'm playing the warrior priest again, say I'm using a two-handed mace, and his, by the way, his mechanic. I keep jumping around here, but the more enemies that die around him, he builds up a meter called Righteous Fury, and as soon as the meter fills up, it'll start draining. But his like hammer starts glowing like golden light with like Sigmar, religious shit, and he starts dealing. Whenever he hits an opponent, he also does 20% weapon damage in smite damage. So, and I think I want to say his rate of fire goes up too. So with the way that this game just handles two-handed combat, it's very satisfying. But as soon as you up that difficulty, you're immediately forced to start going like, oh shit, I gotta pay attention to everything I'm doing here, because now there could be like 5 people attacking me in different intervals, and I now have to choose, do I block or parry with a two-handed weapon? And the way this game handles that is it gives like a little meter of like little shields, and like it'll show you how many blocks you have left before you're totally staggered and broken and you have to attack or run. You have to determine how many blocks and parries do I have left, how many of those are going to be swiped away in the next 2 seconds when I take these 3 hits. Can I push them? And that's a mechanic. It's like when you're blocking, you actually want to push, and it staggers them, so you get a swipe in there too. But you also have to worry about, do you have the stamina for that? Do you have the time to wind up a power strike that actually, with two-handed maces in the game, it actually gives you a nice wide sweep, so you can hit a lot of things at once. You have to make sure you can wind that up, or if someone's behind you, that one little backstab behind you is going to cancel that animation. So you have to go think on your toes. All right, wide sweep now as they're staggered, or turn around and quick sweep, or quick hammer to the fucking face of this rat, and then power up another swing behind me and go around. Like there's a lot of decisions in the melee combat that gets made in a very small amount of time, with even the most moderate level of difficulty, and that makes it very engaging and satisfying, I'd say.
Good. Does it have like actual bosses? Because you mentioned that like you do a little bit more than just escape, and so the first thing I thought of is like, are there like champions that you're taking down or that kind of thing?
Absolutely. So one of the things you'll hear most commonly is one of your teammates announce, oh fuck, there's a Chaos Warrior. Like, they won't say that, but they'll say Chaos Warrior. And a Chaos Warrior will essentially be, obviously, a member of Chaos. Is another... It's an enemy faction. He's not a Skaven. He's not a rat dude, essentially. He's a big fucking mass of muscle, wearing a lot of thick armor and a big fucking like horned helm and shit. Like this will just... Chaos in this universe are essentially like Vikings. They're the Viking kind of aesthetic, where... I told you about the other Imperials and shit. I don't have to get into that, but essentially the bosses can be like a big hulking Chaos Warrior who's actually not even a boss. He'll just be one of the mid bosses, or just a random enemy sprinkled throughout, depending on your difficulty level. So you'll also have, like I said, you have your you have like the dangerous classes that aren't bosses, kind of how Left 4 Dead will have like. The hunter, the boomer, etc. They'll have, well, there's no boomer in here, but they have characters that like a gas rat, which is essentially this rat with a gas mask and a big old backpack that he can shoot poison gas at you. It's an area of effect thing. You want to take him out from range, unless you want to get fucked up. Then there's also like there's a hook rat. That's also one of those fucking annoying ones. A hook rat just makes all this weird noise, walks up behind you. You can see him, no matter... you can see him for like 5 minutes, and he'll still get you. He just has this staff, and he just like hooks you around the neck with the staff, and then he pulls you along away from your group, and he tries to pull you as farther away from your teammates as he can, and then he just like puts the hook up and essentially hangs you and leaves you to die.
Like the smoker from Left 4 Dead? I mean, this all sounds... most of what you're saying...
Well, the smoker blows up with smoke, right?
Well,
I
when you
think.
kill him, he does.
Yeah, this guy
Like
didn't blow up. The hook.
the smoker's main function is that he spits his tongue out, which
Yeah.
gets someone around the neck and then pulls them away and then sits there and gets them.
Pretty much like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Like it's very mirrored, kind of how Left 4 Dead works.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you're saying too just kind of brings up the fact, like, man, fucking remember Left 4 Dead?
I
Like,
know
what a revolutionary game that was when it came out. Holy shit!
when it came out, but man, that
Yes.
got so stale real quick though. But
I don't know.
I partially blame them because I don't think they made enough maps.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say. Left 4 Dead 2 came out like only a year after Left 4 Dead 1, right? And at that point, I
Was it?
was not. Yeah, I think so.
Hmm.
And I was not sick of Left 4 Dead 1 at that point. In fact, Left 4 Dead 2 it kind of made me quit playing Left 4 Dead because it was like I'm not sick of the first one, don't really want to buy the second one, and
Yeah.
now all my friends are playing the second one, so I guess I just don't play Left 4 Dead anymore.
Dude,
Is
that is
kind of
the
what
exact same story with me. Exactly
Yeah.
what happened to me. Like with Left 4 Dead 2, I felt like I was like, what? These are DLC characters. What am I buying another game for? Like, why couldn't you just
Yeah.
like? Oh, okay, I get for dialogue purposes. Certain characters have to be there to talk to each other. I get that, but like, it felt like the same fucking game, and I was like, I don't
Yeah.
want. I'm not doing this.
So I guess though that my the reason I bring that up though is to say that I didn't necessarily get sick of it at the time. But yeah, it's definitely a much older game now. It's really interesting though the way that like even the studio that made Left 4 Dead, Turtle Rock, Turtle Rock gets a lot of credit for making Left 4 Dead. Um, but after they left Valve and went off on their own, they have not done super well, you know. They made Evolve, which was an awesome idea,
Ooh,
but they like really kind of fucked it up in a few ways.
yeah.
And it ended up being very poorly received.
Could you go into that
And
a little bit more? Because this is news. I didn't know that they left Valve. Like, well, I thought it
yeah,
was
did you
always
hear
Valve.
about that game Evolve?
I've heard that. Is it like EVOLV? Or am I just thinking of a
There's an E
Craftsman
at
tool
the
set?
end of it.
Never mind. Yeah, tell me about it.
So Left 4 Dead was made by Turtle Rock Studios, but like inside Valve, as in like Valve. I don't even really know what the exact story was, but it was something like Turtle Rock kind of came up with a prototype for the game as a Counter-Strike mod. They like made a Counter-Strike mod where you fought hordes of enemies that just had knives, and Valve really liked it and like took them on board to develop it into a full game or something like that, which is actually very similar to how Portal became a thing. There was a small team that made a game called Narbacular Drop, which was like Portal, and Valve was like, "Wow, that fucking kicks ass. Come under Valve and let's develop this into a game called Portal." So same kind of thing happened with Left 4 Dead. Maybe I might be slightly wrong on some of these details, but that's essentially it, right? After Turtle Rock then uh, went away from Valve and just made their own independent project, it was called Evolve, which was the same idea of asynchronous or not asynchronous, asymmetric multiplayer, where like one team is for humans and then the other team is something else, right? Because I sorry if I'm jumping around here, but Left 4 Dead, the big thing about Left 4 Dead's multiplayer was that you had four humans versus the horde of zombies, but also four human controlled zombies. So it was like a four against four, but it was asymmetrical. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that was the multiplayer, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about like the versus multiplayer mode of Left
Okay.
4 Dead. And at the time, that was like a really cool, revolutionary, crazy idea. Might not be literally the first game to do it. Definitely not. I mean, I can think of like Conker's Bad Fur Day Beach Mode was asymmetrical, but but still though, it was very novel and cool. So they took that idea and ran with it with Evolve, which was a game where there were four players that played co-op against one giant like monster. So maybe it was like a giant, I don't know, like let's just say they're King Kong, right? So one player gets to be King Kong while the other 4 people are like heroes. I think they had skill trees. I think they were kind of different classes. A lot of this same kind of stuff that you're talking about with this Warhammer game, but it's just them against this one monster that one person is controlling. Great idea, right? But the thing that some of the things that crippled the game was, first of all, this was a game that was made to sell DLC and not to be a really fun game. At least that was the message that they sent out by, like, they were announcing like the pre-order bonus bullshit before they had even announced the game. Really.
Oh.
Like, the first thing anyone heard about this new game Evolve was that there was going to be DLC for it. And we're like, wait, what game? So yeah, and so then when it came out, it was like there were very few options for the players and very few monsters to play as, but you could buy more. And boy, oh boy, could you buy a lot of shit for this game, And so, like, that just was a really bad message to bring new players in. But then also, from what I've heard, I mean, the game just had giant balance issues and bug issues and that kind of stuff that I don't think, by the time they may have gotten that stuff sorted out, the game just had such a bad reputation already that it was kind of, the damage had been done,
Dude, when the payment model supersedes the probable, like, writing of the game, that's probably going to be an issue.
Yeah, so, like, and it pains me because, like, the idea of the game sounded sweet, but yeah, it just, then now, stuff like once Dead by Daylight and that kind of thing was out, I feel like that game kind of did a similar idea a lot better.
And I honestly think Dead by Daylight might be a nail in that genre's coffin for a little bit. I think Dead by Daylight has grown so huge that it's like known as the asynchronous multiplayer game right now, I would say.
Yeah, or asymmetric.
Asymmetrical, yeah. Yeah, asynchronous would be like Phantom Abyss or some shit like that, yeah. But yeah, it's like, I don't know if there's like a certain level of fatigue with it. I know with Left 4 Dead there certainly is, because there's so many people who've played and burnt out on the game because of frustrations for different reasons or another. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's like when you brought up having a big co-op against a single enemy, not thinking about the PvP part of it, I actually was thinking about Destiny the first time you mentioned it. And I remember how much that game kind of also blended MMO-style mechanics with a first-person shooter experience. And it's kind of crazy to think about. I mean, obviously, it's a different template, I guess you'd say, where I'd say Destiny in many ways has the DNA of Halo in it, where this is obviously the DNA of Left 4 Dead. Like, no joke. I looked it up, and the develop is for Vermintide is actually a company called Fat Shark, and I wanted to see if they had done anything prior in the Left 4 Dead style. And they've got a few different games called like Bloodsports TV, Escape Dead Island, War of the Vikings, War of the Roses. I don't know if that's all the same kind of thing though, but Vermintide seems to be their only Warhammer thing so far. So it's crazy because of how good it's going. I know. Okay, so it's actually the first game is called Warhammer End Times Vermintide. I guess I need to play that now because this game is so fun. But like, it's gotten so big with Vermintide 2 that they actually apparently announced Darktide, which is a Warhammer 40K variant, essentially, of the game.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen anything but, oh, dude, I'm looking at oh, man. It's got Dan Abnett listed as the writer for this game. Holy shit. Okay, are you a Warhammer fan?
No, I don't hate it, but I just don't know anything about it.
Fair. And that's totally fine, because there's a fuck ton to know about it. There's like, Warhammer is like one of the longest running fantasy universes out there, with like one of the most fleshed out, like, God, there's so much shit. But even with like one legion of oh God, there's so much you could do. Anyway, yeah, so you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier by comparing it to the StarCraft thing. I think this game is going to be quite a lot like if Left 4 Dead could be a first person shooter in the future, like 40K, and I'm just gonna go ahead and assume the enemy here is Tyranids. So I think it was called the Zerg in StarCraft. I never played
Yeah,
StarCraft.
yeah.
I don't think the Zerg are. I think the Zerg aren't the Zerg like a sentient, like alien intelligent race or something.
Yeah. Well, they have an overmind and like cerebrates. There are intelligent beings at the top of the whatever you call it, like society, right?
Yeah.
But then the ones at the bottom without a cerebrate controlling them are feral.
Okay. So in 40K, Tyranids are essentially I guess you could describe them as the universe's garbage disposal, except they're aggressively so. So they're kind of like xenomorphs if you think about that in the aliens kind of universe, in that they're just perfectly bred killing machines. They're just insectoid. They have a hive mind. So I don't think any of them actually have like a central their own kind of. There's no personality essentially. They're all just monsters of various different sizes and shapes that are just perfectly designed to rend flesh and separate bone from people. So like I assume that's going to be what they're going to do with this, but dude, if just knowing how good Vermintide 2 is, like gameplay wise alone, I got to see how this is going to happen, because Vermintide 2 does melee weapons so well. I would argue two-handed weapons a lot better than one-handed, but it does it so well that every strike, when you're not just spamming away in a recruit difficulty, feels like it's got purpose, or it needs to have purpose. So with the amount of precision involved with a first-person shooter melee kind of thing that you'd think is spammy, there's a lot of tactics into it. I can't wait to see that shit with chain swords. So in 40K, their melee weapons are futuristic because they still have melee weapons apparently. Obviously, if you're orcs, they're still just like fucking choppas. They're just axes and shit. But the Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines, they have chain swords, chain axes, which that's not like a sword with a chain attached to it like Kratos or some shit. That's actually like a chain sword bladed sword, like a chainsaw bladed sword, or a chainsaw bladed axe with an actual motorized function to it. Like you hit people and you hear, it's like fucking satisfying as shit. Blood goes everywhere. It's fun. Then they have like power swords, which are just like actual swords with like a plasma like superheated like layer around it, so it'll cut through anything. There's so much there's so many ways to fuck something up in the Warhammer universe that like I can't wait to see how it gets used in the future when there's more than just swords and guns and shit.
Yeah. So, I wanted to finish what I don't even remember what my original point was bringing up Turtle Rock and how like
The DLC model with the paid shit. Yeah, that stuff.
Oh, so the thing after they did after Evolve, though, I mean, I glanced at their Wikipedia page, and I guess that they had some other stuff that they made, but the Back for Blood is that developer now, but away from Valve, right?
Oh, so it
So
is the same dev.
so Back for Blood is Turtle Rock, yes,
Oh.
but without Valve. And everything I've seen of Back for Blood looks very not good.
Oh.
Like it looks like an extreme, it looks like a big step back from Left 4 Dead, where Left 4 Dead had a lot of really cool shit in it besides just the what the hell was I saying? Oh, just like the horde mode kind of like revolutionary game genre that kind of we hadn't seen before. It also had just a lot of really cool stuff like physics mixed with animations where like when you shot a zombie who was running, the way that they would like still kind of step forward even though they were ragdolling, and it made like dying zombies look really cool and dynamic, right? and the way that like they were so careful about, they put all the light sources low to the ground because that casts zombie shadows on walls, and then everything
Oh
looks
yeah.
scarier, right? Like there's all this kind of
I
stuff,
didn't think
like,
about
and
that. Yeah. Yeah. Because when you had swarms, you'd see the shadows on the building lights before you'd see them actually run around the corner. That's a good
yeah,
point. Yeah.
and it's like a very deliberate choice that all of the light sources in the game are from a low angle.
Hmm.
And the thing is, just from what I've seen of Back for Blood, like none of that kind of stuff is there. Also things like in Left 4 Dead, besides a couple really cheesy spots, the zombies could generally get you no matter where you were. But in Back for Blood, they're like a lot stupider and can't really climb around on stuff as well. And I don't know, it just looks like a janky clone game.
Um,
Um,
I'm going to draw two comparisons here. One back to Vermintide because we're talking about Vermintide.
yeah,
Vermintide does that very well. But second, just because this is a shorter point, I fully agree that it feels like there's something missing. And I actually think a lot of that comes down to the engine. I want to say it uses the Unity engine, which fair choice because I think I think Phasmophobia uses that engine. It felt this very same. It felt like I was playing Phasmophobia.
are you
Honestly,
talking about Vermintide right now?
no, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Back for Blood. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Back for Blood, it's not on the Source engine, and I think the Source engine was one of the things that kind of made the Left 4 Dead experience feel as smooth as it did, because at that point the Source engine was very like relevant, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I just looked it up, and apparently Back for Blood is on Unreal 4.
Unreal 4. Okay, so I was thinking Unity, but either way, you can very much tell that it doesn't feel like Left 4 Dead from the engine. Like, you know something's immediately different. And I think that probably has a lot to do with the difference in mechanics that you're seeing. But I will say, Vermintide does the first thing you're talking about very well with the enemies. Like, you're talking about how if it was a zombie and you like attacked them, you would see them still kind of walk forward because they're a zombie. Like, that's part of the fear aspect, is I'm fighting a corpse right now that's trying to fight me, and it's falling apart, but it's still coming at me. That happens in Vermintide, and I think probably for the kind of game it is the reason that they chose to go with a certain faction of chaos. So I guess to simplify this, in the Warhammer universe, there are 4 main chaos gods. One of the gods is called Nurgle. He's the god of rot, pestilence, and essentially ever living life until you just become a puddle of sludge. Like, you characters in this universe are most notably really fucking big, but like from swelling and rot. Like, their actual flesh is like dense armor. They basically feel no pain. It is kind of one of their things. So they're almost like living zombies. Nurgle is known for his care of his followers. So he wants his followers to feel no pain. So he makes it so, all their nerve endings rot and die. So anyway, when you kill an enemy, even like the basest level of like zombie, the ones like that'll die in one hit from a single swing, the Dynasty Warriors enemy, I guess I could call them, they kind of stand there. Like, you can take even if it's a hammer, you can decapitate them, and they'll actually still kind of just walk forward still, and until they kind of either collapse on their knees or fall over. You're not done with them, I guess, after a lot of strikes, is largely the feeling you start to get. A lot of the times I've found myself, after doing a heavy strike, trying to figure out if I need to hit that enemy again, or if I have time, or if I'm safe to move on to the next target. Because there's been times where I've hit a zombie straight in the head, and honestly, I'm pretty sure I smashed his fucking skull into his shoulders, and I still got hit from behind by that same character. So there's things that make it seem like you're legit fighting the living dead in this game. It does a good job at climbing as well. You mentioned they didn't do so well in climbing in Back for Blood. no matter where you are, where you are in this game, the game does a very good job of making sure you can be reached by at least two of like the mobs at all times. So if you can't be, actually, I haven't even found a place yet where I can't have like 1,000 of like the simplest mob just run up to me. And of course, you can see them climbing up to you. You can kill them while they're climbing up to you, but they're gonna reach you no matter where you are. And that's actually one of the biggest looming threats in the game, is because I think one of the reasons that this game is different from Left 4 Dead or Back 4 Blood is in my friend Jay actually mentioned this earlier. Totally agree with it. In Left 4 Dead, you're kind of encouraged almost to take choke points and say, hey, let's encamp here. I got this health kit. You have the least health. I'm going to go in front of you. I'm going to start fucking just shooting in this hallway. Give me supporting fire from behind. We'll wait till the horde is done. If you do that in Warhammer, you will either get left behind by your teammates who are furiously running forward to try and find some loot dice or just literally just trying to get on the leaderboards, like, because you're competing against each other in score as well. So the DPS will be running forward to get as many kills as they can or something like that, and they can do that because it's a risk. So you can go ahead of the group, you can get left behind the group, but either way, if you're ahead or left behind, you'll get sniped by something. I don't mean literally sniped. I mean like a hook rat will climb to where you are, because they can climb literally anywhere. Or there's like a chaos sorcerer called a leech. They call them leeches, where like essentially they hover you in midair and start life stealing you, or they've got like another chaos sorcerer that creeps. I think they're called a blight stormer, where they create this little, like, you'll see a green chaos logo start glowing on the ground, and then all of a sudden you'll start levitating, and all of a sudden there's this green fire hurricane you're caught in, and now you're in a crowd control spell. And then you get flung out, possibly above or below a level where all your teammates are. And I think that's another thing that separates teammates a lot in this game is we've all dropped down to this area. This guy's up here because he wanted to provide some ranged DPS or whatever. But all that means is now we're all down here fighting, and this guy up here that was trying to provide support, hook rat, sniped, something, can be killed, and we can't get to him because there's no ladders. So, like, it's very much a game where you're being forced to move. You can't really take choke points for any more than a small amount of time. So you're always on your feet, and I like that. And one last thing about Back 4 Blood. Did you play the beta?
No.
Okay, so I played the beta. I had very little hope for it, so I went in not a fan, and that was purely because of what sounds to be our almost identical Left 4 Dead experience. I was kind of left with a bad taste in my mouth, and honestly, I played so much of the first game that I burnt out on it pretty bad. So the formula was stale for me for a good decade. And when I went back to Back 4 Blood, and I played this before Vermintide, mind you, but I went back to it, and I will say I was impressed. I was not at all. I mean, I was expecting the room-to-room hordes, you deal with this and that, but like, I would say the game is actually a pretty good step forward in terms of weapon customization. Maybe not so much customization, but and how you want to combat with the enemy. Like, I want to say with Left 4 Dead, if memory serves, you kind of just found a weapon and used it till its ammo ran out, or you could maybe have like, wasn't there a mode kind of like how you'd start off in Counter-Strike where you have a weapon wheel, and you could kind of choose a weapon to use for a little while?
I haven't really played Counter-Strike either.
Oh, okay.
But you're right in that, yeah, Left 4 Dead, there wasn't any weapon customization from what I remember.
Yeah, and Back 4 Blood, I think you actually choose your weapon. You actually have to buy it, kind of like Counter-Strike, I want to say. At least that's how I remember it in the beta. So you get more to play with right off the bat. So there's the idea that you can figure out what character you like to play. I guess I don't think the characters mattered. I think just the weapons mattered. So you just kind of went through it like that. And I didn't care about the game enough to keep playing it after the beta or even to buy the game. But I would say it's a little bit. I would say it's better than Left 4 Dead 2. In The combat, maybe not so much as what you're saying now, though, because I never really got the whole lighting thing you're talking about in order to, the low lighting to make all the crowds kind of stand out against the walls and such. But I would say give it a shot if you liked Left 4 Dead, and then judge it off that. It really doesn't feel like a big leap behind, I would say.
Okay.
But Vermintide is better. It pretty much does everything Left 4 Dead didn't do. That keeps me going back to it, because you have 4 classes per character. Technically, Sienna, the fire mage, doesn't have her DLC class yet. I think they're still working on that. So she's just got 3. But each other one has 4, and you can play them however you want, of course, like I said. But the weapons that you start out with are very shitty, but you have a choice. You can go, okay, well, I'm a dwarven ranger, whatever. I can use what's called a handgun, which is actually like almost like a 22 rifle without a sight. You can use a crossbow. You can use what's called a repeater crossbow on Victor. It's like a crossbow with like a box of arrows just sitting on top. You can use a hammer, like a great hammer, or a hammer and shield, an axe and shield, a great axe. They all do different types of damage. There's swords. What I'm trying to say is, when you start off, there's like 10 different ways you can have fun with a character you're playing, and it's unique to that character. So like, you have to play a character that no one else has picked. So like, if you start a match in quick play, you could host it and people can join. But if you're playing the character you want to play, they can't play that character. There's no duplicates. So, anyway, yeah, there's lots to it. I would encourage people to try it for sure.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, you had a game that you mentioned that's actually retro. Mine's not so
That's right.
retro.
Yeah. In between my Final Fantasy VII runs, usually when they die, I've got a couple PlayStation games that I've been playing.
Dude, congrats on 650?
648.
Holy shit, man! Sub 650 at least, but 648, nice, man.
648.12 is my newest PB. Speaking of which, I've actually spent the last couple weekends hard nerding out on some new cutting edge speed tech for FF7. There is a cutting edge new speed strat for one part of the game. But it is insanely complicated to
Turbo
know,
controller?
how it works. No. So I'm talking about the elevator manipulation. I won't go too far into it, but to give you an idea, there's the part of the game where you get to the Shinra HQ and you can either take the stairs or go up the elevator, right? When I first started running, everyone took the stairs. It was just generally understood and believed, as far as I knew, that the stairs were faster. Um, but also, that was back when people would buy an extra cover materia and use 2 covers for safety later in the game. But it turns out that if you don't buy that second cover, you can afford 12 more grenades. And with those 12 more grenades, you can get through the elevator.
Oh.
If you get if you get few enough battles, because it's random. And on average, the elevator's faster. It's got a chance to be even faster if you get lucky, or it's got a chance to completely ruin your run. If you get way too many stops, way too many battles, the battles are bad, you lose a bunch of time, and you spend too many grenades, and then your run is dead an hour in.
How many? So an hour in. Okay, I was gonna say, how far in is it?
Yeah, it's an hour in. The elevator is. So, but because on average it's faster, so now everyone takes the elevator for the most part. At least the people going for better times will take the elevator for their chance for a minute time save, 2 minutes time save maybe. But it's super frustrating because it's really random how many battles you get in as you ascend the elevator. And
What's the variance? How many would you say, like between 2 and 10?
So the elevator will do generally between 4 and 6 stops, which doesn't really sound like that big of a variance. Wait a second, let me think about this.
I mean, okay, so 2 battles, I mean, even if you run, that's what, like at least 15, 20 seconds.
Well, you can't run in the elevator.
Oh,
You can't
fuck.
escape the battles. Yeah.
Oh, so it really is a
So
risk.
So yeah, it goes between 4 and 6 stops, but any one of the stops might be not a battle. If you land on, so you start on floor 6 and you go up to floor 59, and every jump is between 7 and 15 floors. At
Whoa.
least 7, as many as 15 floors. You can jump in one go, and each floor has a battle associated to it, unless it's floor 29, 38, 47, or 56. Those 4 floors, instead the doors open. It's like a joke. There's like a guy behind the door, and he's like, oh no, and he runs away, and then the doors just close and you go again.
That's cute.
Yeah, so it's like super awesome if you get that multiple times in a run, you know what I mean? Like you go and, like, the best possible thing to happen, but this is like a 1 in 1,000 chance, right? Is that you go into the elevator, you get one encounter cuz you have to, and then boom, floor 29, floor 38, floor 47, floor 59, right? Cuz 59 is the end.
Literally
That
just
is
getting all those floors, right? All the
Yep.
floors with the guy that's surprised.
Yep.
Okay.
So that is super fast if that happens, but it's insanely unlikely. And then the thing that's just really frustrating about having this variance in the speed run is that um it's even though on average it's faster than the stairs, the inconsistency is frustrating, because if you get a PB with a good elevator, now you have to run against that. And it's like time loss every time that you have just an average one or a below average one? So we've been working on a way to manipulate the elevator to get you that one encounter and then 3 managers, and then you're at the top path every time. But it's very complicated because it not only starts at a random spot, like your RNG table, the game's RNG like table that it uses to decide what floors you land on is going to start in a different position every time that you get to the elevator in a run. And then on top of that, everything afterward is frame perfect in order to do it.
Like
So
after a
let me
certain floor?
let's real quickly discuss exactly how it works. All
Okay.
right. So when you are in a field in Final Fantasy VII, which is that's what we call something that is not a battle, it's not the menu, it's not the world map, and it's not a mini game, right? It's just a place that you're in. You've got your little cloud that runs around. You're on a field, right? That's what that terminology means. When you are on a field, there is a specific RNG table that the game uses for its RNG values. It's very similar. It's similar to how a few other games do it, like Doom, which is that instead of having some kind of weird bitwise function or whatever to generate random numbers, they've got a list, a literal hard coded in the game list of every number from 0 to 255 arranged in a pseudo random order. You know what I mean? It's just hard coded in the game. Is every
Specifically
number
255.
from 0 to 255. So it is every number from 0 to 255, right? All 256 of those numbers just scrambled up and then written on the game. Here they are. You know what I mean? It's like they took a deck of cards and shuffled it, right? They shuffled it a bunch. Okay, it's shuffled, and now this order of the deck of cards is the order that this game always has.
You're not seeing this though. This is just something you're encountering. Is what I guess what I'm curious about.
This is something that has been mined out of the game, essentially. You know what I mean? Like,
So
this
like
is something
not
we
not
know
visual.
about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Um, So every time that the game wants a random number, it calls for a random number and it goes to the next one on that list, right? Does that make sense? Just this
Makes sense. Yeah, yeah.
hard-coded list of numbers that is in this order, and it gets them in this order.
What
So
go ahead,
mhm.
go ahead. I was gonna say what
So
triggers the change, but go ahead.
oh, everything that is random.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So anytime that anything on a field map wants a random number, it gets the next one on this list. That's just how it works. And so your position on that list we refer to as your list value. And so
Oh.
that's something that you can look at like in your RAM values if you're like on an emulator and you're looking at different memory addresses, there's one that refers to your index position on that list, so you can as you see random events trigger like different animations or different things, you can see that index say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, until it wraps her back around to 0. It gets more complicated though. There is another value that we refer to as stone, but you can also call it an incrementer. It changes how many values the list jumps when a random number is called. So once something changes your stone value, that now makes it so that instead of just looking at the next number on the list, it looks that many numbers down instead. So instead of looking at list value 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, your stone might be 33.
And your
So
stone is
now,
where you physically are, like the value of in the memory where you physically are on the map.
this doesn't have anything to do with, you mean like clouds coordinates?
Yeah.
No, nothing to do with that.
Okay.
It is simply like I kind of forget the word stone. It's kind of weird that it's
Okay.
called that.
Not part of the
It
field then.
correct.
All
It's
right.
part of the field RNG logic.
Gotcha.
So I mentioned that every time a random number is asked for, it just looks at the next thing on the list. That's because your incrementer is 1. So it looks one number
Oh,
down
okay.
the list every time.
Yeah.
But something might change it to 33. So now you're at 0, but the next time the game wants a random number, it jumps 33 numbers down the list and looks at that one, and it keeps doing that. And that number, I'm gonna call it stone because it's just what we call it, and so it's gonna come out naturally.
Mhm.
That number, though, it can only be any number that is a multiple of 16 plus 1. So it can be 0, 17, 33, 49, and so on. Those are the numbers. So here is exactly how the elevator works, all right? So you start on floor 6, and when you press the button, first you press the button, right? There's a button on the elevator that you have to press and it lands you on a floor. You press the button, 50 frames of animations happen, right? Cloud raises his hand up, he hits the button, it makes a sound effect. The game thinks for a second, right? Exactly 50 frames after you hit that button. Well, actually, exactly 51 frames after you hit the button. The game takes the. Oh, okay. So when you're in the elevator, by the way, the game is counting every single frame. There is a there is a guy who's like behind the walls. You can't see him, but he is a model that has a script on him that every single frame it counts up. And for some reason, it rolls over at 254, not 256. For some reason, it's hard coded that if it's 254, reset it to 0. But
Well,
otherwise, it's
because 0 is the first digit, right? 255 characters or instances total, right? So,
well, you would expect it to roll over at 256 because it's an 8-bit value and it can carry up to
oh,
255. But for some fucking reason, they hard coded it to roll over at 254 instead,
huh.
which messes with a lot of the math when you're trying to do this stuff. When you're
That's
trying to
probably the
manipulate it.
actual cause, honestly.
Well, so here's exactly how it works. So, that guy, that model that's behind the wall is counting up every single frame. And when you press the button, it waits 50 frames or 51 frames, and then it takes his value, his number that he's currently on. Let's say it's 160, right? And it actually so that I can do this properly, I'm gonna straight up bring up a calculator while I talk about this. Let's say it's 160. That's the frame number that we're on when it decides to do the calculation. All right. It takes that number and it does mod 16 on it, which means it divides it by 16 and returns the remainder. Yeah? The
Yep.
remainder. So the remainder in that case is 0. So it takes that number and uses it to find you a new stone value, which means, like I said before, it's just any number 0 through 15 times 16 plus 1. So it takes that 160, mod 16, that makes 0, times 16 plus 1 means it's 1, right? That's your new stone. It sets that as stone now. So then your list value, let's say it was 124 when you went into the elevator, it's going to add 1 to that cuz that's your new incrementer, that's your stone. So it adds 1 to that. That gives you a new number of 125. Um so then that means that the game looks 125 spots down the table of predetermined random values to find out what the 125th number is. This part I can't actually factually do because I don't know what that refers to, but let's just say it's 67, right? Let's just say, okay, 67, that's your number. It takes that number, mods it by 16, then mods it by 9, and then adds 7,
When you say
which
mods, are
is
you dividing or multiplying?
that mod means divide and you return the remainder.
Return the
So
remainder.
like
Okay, gotcha.
19 mod 16 is 3, right?
Right.
Because it just rolled over at 16 and then counted up to 3.
Okay.
So in my example there, that final value that you get is 10. You will get a number between 7 and 15, and that's how many floors you jump, right? That's how many floors you go up.
10
That's
floors?
so in this case it was 10
10 foot
floors.
because of the, yeah, okay. So you found do you have like an actual formula that you can plug numbers into here? Like, do you know what your stone value is before you enter the elevator?
Not during a speed run on console normally.
Emulator.
Well, stone actually, yes, you do know that. That gets set to 33 when you do the squats mini game, and it doesn't move from there. So you know stone, but you don't know what your list is because your list value is it's just everything in field maps that is using RNG is constantly incrementing that value, and so by the time you get to the elevator, unaided, you just wouldn't know what it's at. Until now, there is a FF7 mad scientist by the name of I've seen him Brutal AI is his name on forums, but I've also seen Brutal Speed is his name on Twitch. But he actually created a spreadsheet where if as you relatively soon before you get to the elevator, you have to visit Eris's house after the plate drops. You run to Eris's
Yeah.
house, and there's like the flashback scene there. If you look at the waterfall, you can it is using your list value in order to sparkle. Like that's one of the things that uses the RNG table is the rate at which the elevator sparkles.
Wait, hang on. When you say sparkle, you don't mean like there's like a materia in the background. You mean like
Is
there's like an actual image, like you can see something happening with the area around you?
Yeah.
Like,
There's a waterfall on Eris's house screen
yeah,
on
it's like in the
that
background,
field.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's basically the way it's animated is it has like 2 frames, and it just flashes between them kind
Oh,
of. Really what we're looking at is the part where the water crashes, the crashy bottom part of a waterfall. That has like 2 frames. It can either be small or it can be big, and you have to like count how long, like basically if you take up a stopwatch, you know how there's a lap button and you can
yeah.
like save the lap but the timer keeps timing. If you are what people are going to have to do, and this sounds a little sketchy maybe if you're if you're not into this kind of thing with speedruns, but what people are going to have to do is record. You're recording because you're streaming,
Yeah.
but then you run into Eris's house, and then during the long cutscene that you get into, you need to look back at your recording and probably play it back at like 25% speed and like time, like lap time these waterfall glows. And then if you enter the time, because they can be, there's three values it can be. If you play it back at 25% speed, it's like they can be either like 0.1 seconds apart,
Oh my god.
1.5 seconds apart, or 2 seconds apart,
Okay, well
something like that,
those are
right?
very different wide variances. Okay, so
For
that'll help, but like 0.5 seconds, like yeah, okay.
yeah, it's it's either 0.5, 1.5, or 2, or something
Yeah.
like that.
There's a
Um,
second in between each interval, so you can kind of just
yeah.
get it. So,
And so you take the last like 9 of them that you saw and put it in this spreadsheet that Brutal made, and it tells you what list value you're on.
oh my
And
god,
it
does your
tell
list
and
value change? Is that dynamic through the game?
yeah, it's just
Just
it is
it's
just
just
the in
one of the. Okay, so you're bringing up the waterfall because this is right before the Shinra scene. I see. Okay,
yes.
yeah.
It's like the last it's the last like reliable thing that you can use to look at to determine what list you're on.
Whether or not the elevator is going to screw you.
Well, no, because we're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix the elevator
Oh,
using this. Which is why I kind of wanted to work backwards before. We'll get back to the waterfall because let's just say you do. Okay, well, no, we're far enough. So the spreadsheet tells you if if you do all of your movement from then on exactly correctly, sometimes like frame perfect, you got to be on a couple screens. Then you will get to the elevator on a known list value. All right. So now you actually know where on the RNG table you are going into the elevator. So, with that amount of information, I actually spent the last couple weeks writing a Python script
oh fuck.
that it's oh boy. So it use everything that I just told you is extremely important about like okay, so it counts up a number every single frame, and then when you press a button 50 frames later it does this exact calculation of these mods and this number plus that number. It looks it up in the RNG table and that gives you that jump, right? Okay. So I wrote a script that it takes your starting list value and it simulates if you were to press the button on these 16 frames, which the very first thing it does is it mod 16s the elevator count, which means from any position you can only have 16 possible outcomes that it just loops between, right? So it takes all 16 of those and it like simulates this is what floor you would land on if you press the button on this frame. And the first thing it does is you're going to get a battle at first. There's no way to get straight to a manager, it's too high up. So, but the best fights you can get are floors 15, 17, or 19. So, also, there's no way to like
Wait, hang on.
get
Best fights?
yeah, as in those floors have faster fights
Oh,
than
okay.
the other floors.
Gotcha.
Um so you would like to land on 15, 17, or 19. So at first, the script finds a window of those three floors in a row on your list. It says if you were to hit the button on this frame, or this frame all in a row, you get 15, 17, and 19. Not repeating. It can't be two 17s. It can't be two 19s because if that happened and you landed on 19, you don't know where you are anymore because it's one of those two, and you need to keep track of your frame counts here. So it finds you a window of those three, but not repeating, and it tells you, okay, so if you okay, so what you actually do then is when you walk into the elevator, you hold triangle. That
For your menu.
that way, yes, you're just holding triangle because that way as soon as you gain control of Cloud, you go into the menu and it freezes the frame counter at frame 81. It's 81 frames in, and that freezes the frame counter because now you're in a menu. And then what the script does is it takes that frame window of those three frames, it targets the middle one, and it converts it to a milliseconds value where you then have to put that into a little program we use called Flow Timer, which I believe was originally made for getting the best Pokemon starter and Pokemon speedruns,
Hell yeah.
because that's based on frame perfect button presses as well. So they made a timer that, goes boop, boop, boop,
Wait,
boop,
wait, wait.
boop,
Gen 1?
right? I think so. I don't know. One of them.
I'm going to have to look
I'm
into
not a
that.
I'm not a Pokemon speedrunner.
Yeah, go
But
ahead.
basically, what it does is, yeah, you put in like 20,433 milliseconds, right? And so then it counts that down, and then at the end of it, it goes boop 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 boop, right? And you have to know, okay, it's on the fifth beep that I hit the button, right? And so boom, you use that to boom. You want to nail that exact frame, but like I said, it's targeting a window of 3, so you can be a frame early or you can be a frame late, and you will land on a good starting floor because it's going to be 15, 17, or 19, right? Then what the script does that I wrote is it it takes the first one. Let's say you got 17. It then simulates, well, it already did this ahead of time, by the way. So this is something that I've already run for every single list value, and now when I'm actually in a run, I just have a notepad document that has literally every single thing routed out on it. So this script was just to prepare, but what it did, right, was it found that window of 3, and then it says, okay, if you landed on 17, that means now you're on a new list value, and these are your next 16 possibilities, and it needs to locate a jump that'll land you on floor 29 because that's your first manager. And then it takes that updated value and says, okay, so let's just say you're on floor 29 now. To get to there, you had to get to this list value, which means that your next 16 possibilities on the 16 different frames are these. And so which one of those is a jump of 9? Because that gets you on 37, right? Output that, and then take that new list value, those 16 new possibilities, locate another 9 because that jump puts you on floor 47. Then do the same thing, but locate 12 or greater because that puts you on 59. Boom, that is your complete manipulation for that floor. And now do all of that again for if you hit the middle frame of the 3-frame window, and then do all of that again for if you hit the third of the 3-frame window. So what that means is, as a player, like I said, you get it's all the script already created a manipulation for every single starting list value that's compatible, and it's just in a notepad document. So what I would do now is use that spreadsheet to tell me what list I'm on, then go to my document, go down to the list value that I'm on, and it has, okay, set your timer for this many milliseconds. And so what you have to do then is I mentioned that when you get into the elevator, you hold the menu button. So you close the menu at the same time that you start the timer and run up and hit the button the first time.
So you're speed running your speed run.
that initiates a cutscene, and then that times your first button press. Awesome. Everything after the button press is much more controllable. So what happens is, what the script outputs for you, let's say you're on a manip of like floor 15 is your starting floor. What the actual script outputs after that is then it outputs something like 4 frames, 10 frames, 7 frames, 2 frames, right? Is what it says for each floor. And so what that means to the player is you fight your first battle, and then everything after the first button press is very precisely frame counted. The first button press has to be based on time because there's a cutscene that can't be done frame perfectly.
Well, hang on. So
Okay.
Frame perfectly. You're saying? Are you saying when you start a battle, you have 4 frames to input a button?
No.
Okay.
So here's exactly what it means.
Oh, thank God.
The first button press, there's a cutscene in there like while the frame count is going on, and so you can't be precise with it because you'd have to mash through the text exactly the same way every time and all that kind of stuff. So that's why that one is handled by a timer. But after that, once you hit that button the first time and you get the floor that you're expecting, that means you hit that button on an expected floor. And so that you're on the right frame count, And so the script which has already done the math for the rest of it, is now able to be followed. And how it works is that Cloud runs down, the party gets ready, and then a battle initiates. And during the battle, the frame counter isn't going because it's a field script, right? So it freezes during battles. Then, after the battle, the elevators close and you gain control of Cloud again after a specific number of frames. And this is stuff that I just had to personally like just frame by frame count out, you know? I had to like end a battle, have, you know, RAM watch up, pause the emulator and just like frame advance, hitting a key, counting it until like I got control again in order to get these values right.
So you've been developing the strat on an emulator?
Yeah.
Okay, just to kind of like monitor the progress, I guess.
Well, to make it possible, I mean, in order to figure this shit out, yeah, I had to be able to read RAM values and stuff.
That is fucking insane, man. That you can like, okay, that you can say essentially, I need higher than initial. I need higher than the initial tools developed for the developers to make this game in order to science this game down to as few hours as possible. It's crazy.
Oh yeah,
that you have to go through. You wrote a Python script. That's insane, man.
Some people aren't into this part of speedrunning. Some people think that like, okay, this game is too optimized now, and the people are doing bullshit. But basically, what it comes down to is after the battle ends and you gain control of Cloud, if you just walk upward, you walk up to the button, right? And then, just like before with the menuing to know what frame you're on, you hit menu, right? You got to time a menu hit. You try to time your menu hit frame perfect. And you know it's frame perfect because as Cloud walks up, he bumps into the button and his hair, the spike on his hair turns.
Oh my God.
So you're aiming for a certain frame where it's like but because of his hair, you know how many frames you took. So if his hair looks a certain way, you know that you hit the button a frame early.
Jesus.
If it looks a different way, you hit it right on. If it looks a different way, you hit it a frame late. If it looks a different way, you hit it 2 frames late.
How does his hair look different? Is he like? Are you talking about?
He's got
like,
that big spike on his hair.
So he's got the big spike, right? But like, why am I thinking it's always been static just based off of the direction that he's looking? Like, how does his hair change?
No, that is what it is. When you walk up in the elevator, he will at some point bump into the button, which will turn him 45 degrees.
Oh, it turns his model.
Left.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
But it does it like kind of smoothly. There's like 3 frames of him turning, and so it gives a really easy visual indicator of whether you hit the button on the right frame or not.
Nice.
So let's say you were frame perfect and you hit menu on just the right spot. Remember, menuing freezes the elevator counter. So what that means now is that I mentioned that the script outputs a something like 10 frames, 5 frames, 3 frames, 7 frames or something, right? So you're looking at the first one right now, 10. And if you hit the button frame perfect, or not the button, if you hit menu frame perfect, that means it's 10 frames later that you need to actually hit the button, exactly 10 frames later. And you know that because everything is very controlled at this point. So if you exit the menu and hold triangle during the menu exit, it will advance 1 frame and then bring the menu back up.
Wow.
So you do that 10 times, which advances 10 frames exactly. And then the last time, as you close the menu, you hold circle to hit the button. Are
you doing this on a turbo controller, by the way? I think I asked that before. So your
turbo would fuck this up big time. Because
I think it would too, because you would have off timing because it's either on or off at a specific interval, and you're kind of just gambling. It's kind of RNG at a certain point. I get that, but like with fucking menus at 1 dude, 1 frame is like that's a lot. That's a lot to predict at once.
At this point, though, now it's that like if Cloud's hair looked this way, you know that you were 2 frames late.
Well, okay, so, I guess I need to also ask. So let's get. I hesitate to say let's get into the technical aspect of this, but this game is a 60 hertz game, right? It's running
Well,
60 hertz, but is it a 30 frames game?
fields are 30 frames per second.
Okay, so you kind of almost have twice the buffer size than I was thinking here.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's better because I was thinking this is you have a 1 in 60 chance to hit what you're trying to hit. I was like, what the fuck? That's a lot of timing like that you have to get down perfect. But you know, twice the odds is better.
You have a so as far as each individual floor goes, when you need to hit the menu on the frame perfect, you have a 4-frame window at that point. 5 if you're like really observant. Actually, I mean honestly, if you're super quick and observant, there's like 8 different positions that you could research. I can only quickly identify 4 of them. So I just use that 4-frame window, you know.
Literally,
But,
you're off one word, and the word is punish, and then immediately you'd be talking high-level fighting game talk.
Oh, sure. So what? Well, you can get punished in this because like let's say okay, so let's say you needed a 10 framer, but you were 2 frames late from the perfect position, right? So now you only need to wait 8 frames. You need to do the menu buffer 8 times and then hit the button. Boom, that'll give you a manager, right?
Ah.
Here's the thing though, is positions 0, which is the perfect one, and -1, which is 1 early, right? Those 2 are fine. But if you hit position 1 or 2, where you're 1 or 2 frames late, that also makes it so that it takes Cloud an extra frame to run back to the party after he hits the button because he walked too far up. So that means that the next time when it says when the when the notes that my script outputted say that you need to wait 6 frames for the next one, you need to remember you actually only have to wait 5 because you already took that frame after the previous button press. So
how many times like within a minute does this calculation happen? Like how many obviously you go to the elevator button once and then you come back and then you have your result, but like does that happen on a per floor basis?
Yeah, each time you hit the
Jesus.
button, it does a calculation.
So the potential to be off here by the end is quite high, I would think.
Well, that's what all the menu buffering is for, is that it makes it once you're in there, it's controlled,
Okay,
you
I
know?
see.
Yeah, because it's like, boom, I hit the menu. Oh, I was 1 frame late, so I'm gonna discount 1 frame off of what I'm supposed to wait. Boom, I got the manager. Okay, next floor, right? I walk up, boom, I was perfect this time, but I was 1 frame late last time, which puts me in the zone where I need to discount 1 off of this one. So it says 3, I'm gonna do 2, right? And then
So you're just
do it.
triangle on and off until you get that value.
Yeah. And so I have gotten it to work on console at this point. But it's gonna be a little bit more practice before we can do it in runs. But it's pretty insane at this point.
You've got a whole lab going for this FF7 speedrunning, man. I appreciate it. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Let me
And
ask
yeah,
Python. So I guess to offshoot, you wrote a Python script to predict your next move, like essentially like how many frames you need to go.
yeah.
I'm trying to figure out like Python. I'm not a developer at all, so Python I've heard is not fun to learn and program for. So like, I mean, how much did you have to invest like time wise? I mean, did you already know Python or what taught you Python?
I have a background in ActionScript from when I was in like high school. I made Flash games, you know. And it's very similar, you know.
You made Flash games, like what kind?
Well, shitty ones.
Well, they're Flash games, so that goes without saying.
Yeah, I made like some school projects. One of them was like an Oregon Trail ripoff board game where you like rolled a die and it moved you a certain number of spaces and then like a random event happened, you know, and you would just see if you could keep your caravan alive throughout the whole thing. But it was just a dice roll for
Basic
everything.
logic,
You know?
but sounds what I would imagine Oregon Trail is like.
I mean, for a school project, the
Yeah.
teacher was pretty stoked about it. And then another one I made was it was like a Hades. Okay, we were doing a project about like Roman versus Greek mythology, and Hades and Pluto are, equivalent gods, right?
Analogs.
So and that was like the duo that I got. Everyone got like a duo of equivalent gods to make something
Appropriate.
out of,
Hell
right?
yeah.
And I got Hades and Pluto, so I made a Flash game that's like you're in hell and there's all the underworld, right? And there's all all the souls of people are falling, right? They were stick figures. All the souls of people were falling in, and the two players, one person played as Hades and one person played as Pluto, and they were like little baskets, right? That had to like try to catch more souls than the other person. But then
This is great, actually.
there were also power-ups, where like the people on top, like there was a grass level at the top and you could see people walking around and they would worship the two gods, and when they worshiped them it would give them power, and then that would like you could move faster, or there was a power that like moved your basket up,
They
so
could
you could like
sacrifice
get
themselves faster for you.
uh it was so that stuff like that,
I
right?
like that. It's nice.
So and then a little bit later, I did try. Oh, I made like a No More Heroes clone.
I never played that. What was that game about?
It's great. I can talk about that another episode.
It's in
It's a
like
very
the Borderlands area of my brain where I know I need to play it, but like, and it's insanely good. But I don't know if this is insanely good, but for some reason I've heard of that game, and for some reason my brain filed it under Borderlands category.
Yes. Well, you should play it. Perhaps I'll talk about it next week in a non-spoilery way.
Yeah.
Basically, I saw somebody made Portal, the Flash version, when I was younger, and it was awesome. And I was like, I'm gonna do that with No More Heroes. So I started to make a No More Heroes Flash version, and like I got far enough to make a little hack and slash that sucked, but like I made it. Anyway, point is, I have experience with programming as far as like I know how to establish variables, make if statements, make while loops, make for loops, build arrays, make for loops that look at the elements of an array, right? All that kind of stuff. And all of that was extremely easy to transfer into Python. I basically already knew Python. I just had to learn a couple syntax points.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
learn the grammar, so to speak, of
Yeah.
the language. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Makes
it's a
sense.
little weird. The thing that is very strange to me about Python is that there is no closing curly braces. As in, like, when you make an if statement, generally you would say if this operator this, or not operator. What do you call the thing that comparator? It, if this, right? And then you put an opening curly brace, right? And then your next line is indented, and this is what it does if the statement is true. And then when you're done writing the things that happen if the statement is true, you put a closing curly brace, right? In Python, the indentation is actually read as like the opening closing curly braces. You put a colon after the if statement. You do like if x equals 4 colon, and then your next line is indented. But then to stop the if statement, you just unindent your next line, and it recognizes that. And I don't think I like that very much. It feels less controlled to me. Like I just have to trust it, which is technically what you're doing with a compiler anyway, but like I don't know, it's weird. It's strange to me. So Python is a little weird in a couple ways, but it's very nice in some other ways.
Dude, I know how to turn a screwdriver. I can't program for shit.
Well, so to be very clear about what I made in Python, it is not something intended to be ran in conjunction with the game.
Oh, yeah.
It was a tool to very quickly route out a bunch of shit ahead of time.
Kind
You
of
know
just
what I
make some
mean?
calculations.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that the purpose is that the spreadsheet that Brutal made tells you, oh, you're on list 204. Now put 204 into the script and it tells you what the manip is. Nah. You already ran the script for all 256 possibilities. It's all in a notepad document, right? Just control F for it, and that's what you do during a run. Okay, so some manips are a lot better than others, Some are a lot faster, some have better opening windows, some are actually impossible and you should avoid. So I actually created a grid of all the like I went through all of my script outputs for every single list and analyzed it, and just by my own opinion, judged how good they are, and then on the WordPad document begins with just a grid of all numbers 0 to 255, and I color coded how much I liked each of them, so that because Brutal's sheet actually says, like, you can pick what list you want to land on. When you put in the waterfall glow values, it says, hey, if you're natural, you're gonna be on 204. But if
Natural?
you were to natural, like if you just go from now on, you're gonna be on 204. That's what you've landed on naturally. But if you were to just like stand outside Eris's house for an extra second before you ran out, then you'd be on list 237, and maybe that one's good, and so for that reason, I have them all color coded so I can really quickly see, oh yeah, that's a blue one, I'm gonna do that one, and so then I have to wait a certain number of time before exiting the field, and then that puts you on the path to get on that one, right? And then that same color coded grid, I can then just highlight the number that I like, the one that I picked, which has asterisks around it to make it easy to do the next part, where you highlight it with the asterisks around it, Control F, enter, boom, that jumps you right down to the spot on the document that has that manip written out, So I'm prepared.
Damn.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of practice to do still to actually get this shit down, because it's very, very complicated. And you might be thinking to yourself, Dash, I thought you said that it's only like a minute faster to get a perfect elevator. Yeah, it's like a minute faster, but it's gonna be consistent.
A consistent minute, yeah. Like, well, a minute is a huge amount of time in a speedrunning world. Like that's world changing. Like, what the fuck?
A minute is a really big deal. But over the course of a 7-hour run, it's kind of more important just that we stop getting screwed, like the elevator. Just
well, this is like 1 hour in, you said, right?
Yeah, it's an hour in, and so to just lose 2 minutes because your elevator sucked, we're done with that, So it's more about getting rid of that. Because as everything goes, one really weird thing about speedrunning a game like this is that if you are just lucky and you happen to get perfect RNG, that's faster than manipulating, because it takes time to do the things that manipulate it. You know what I mean?
True.
You have to wait on this screen to get your list to advance. You have to run this way on this screen to get your list set up right. You have to menu at the elevator button and buffer menus a bunch of times, which takes like a second each time you do it, You have to do all this shit. But if you just happened to get a perfect elevator, you don't have to do any of that, So it's a weird thing, to come up with these manipulations. You sacrifice that absolute God possibility, the God RNG. You sacrifice that to make sure that you just get the really good run, really good, like it's still gonna save time, but even more importantly, though, it's consistent.
Well,
but anyway,
I assume this is in disc 1, right?
Oh yeah.
So how many of these kind of controlled exploits are there in the game?
The other really big one that is very similar to all of this is the final descent manipulation. So on the final descent,
is this the battle with Sephiroth?
Just beforehand.
Okay.
So just before the last three bosses, right? You fight Genova. Why did I think it was 4?
You ultimate
fight,
weapon?
Well, you fight Genova, and then you fight Bizarro Sephiroth, and then you fight Safer Sephiroth, and that's the final. Spoilers! That's the final 3 bosses, But just before that, there's these 13, I think, these 13 rocks that you jump down, and on each of them, you have a random chance to get a battle, you know? So that's the thing. And for a long time, this just was absolutely terrible for runners because you could just randomly get 5 encounters. It was the same thing, right? It was the same exact thing where it's just you got a random chance to get a bunch of battles. You can lose up to 2 minutes.
Super
if
insulting at the very end of the game, though.
yeah, yes, at the very end you can just lose 2 minutes, right?
Fuck.
But it's the same thing though. It uses the list value and it uses the stone value and all that. And so so Ace Zephyr, one of the most knowledgeable people around as far as the inner workings of this game goes, he created a script where before the final descent, before you go into Northern Cave, there's the cutscene before you fight Hojo. And during that cutscene, there's this thing that's sparking. This is very similar to the waterfall sparkles.
Wait a minute. Hang on. I'm sorry. You fight Hojo?
Yeah, you fight Hojo in Final Fantasy VII.
Damn it! It's been a long time since I played Final Fantasy VII.
It's very close to the end. It's like it's the last thing that happens on disc 2.
Yeah. Wait. Disc 2. It's a 3-disc game, isn't it?
Yes, not 4.
I'm thinking 4 for some reason. Anyway, go ahead.
Final Fantasy 8 and 9 are 4 discs, but 7 is 3.
Okay.
So during the cutscene in front of Hojo, there's this thing that's sparking, and just like the waterfall sparkles, it sparks at different intervals depending on what list values it's getting. And so if you were to track all of them, you could a script could make a very reasonable, if not surefire, guess as to what your current list value is. And so Ace Zephyr made a tool that has a button. It's a web page with a button on it that you just, as you're mashing through the dialogue of that cutscene, every time you see it spark, you just click that button, right? And then at the end of it, you say run, and it says, okay, here's the list value you're on. This is how many encounters you're going to get in the final descent. But, and it does all this calculation for you, and it says, if you were to just stand for 3 extra seconds on this particular field of the Northern Cave, that'll advance list in a way where you'll get 1 encounter, or maybe you'll get 0. But a lot of the time it would just get you down to 1 or something. But that was very helpful, right? And that's basically very, very similar to the waterfall thing now. But then an even crazier manipulation was found where way earlier in the game. So first of all, the first time that you go to Bone Village, which is right after you fight Demon's Gate, which is about 3.5 hours into the run.
Sorry,
right?
That's a good song by Candlemass. Anyway, go ahead.
About 3.5 hours into the run is the first time that you enter Bone Village, and there's this guy that you talk to. And when you talk to him, it sets stone. Remember stone, the incrementer value?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm glad that we started getting into this because this is why it's called stone. Stone is the speedrunner name for it. It doesn't have a name in the programming, It's just memory address 075 CBE or something.
I was thinking it was like a land-based code. Like this is where you are in the map or something.
Oh, yeah. So the reason it's called stone is because barely anything in the game actually uses it. Well, I mean, everything uses it. Again, okay. What it does is every time that list is called, it jumps down the list by the number that is stone.
Yeah.
And that is always happening. Very, 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 very few things in the game actually change your stone value.
Can we talk about this real quick? So
yeah,
is this game's like base level kind of programming to just make it seem like it's not RNG, but it's kind of RNG? Like is this in the game to make it not predictable?
Yeah. This is this game's way of doing RNG.
Okay.
This is just how they did it. When they want a random number, this is the process. We've got a list of numbers that we've pre-coded into a shuffled order. But because that's not random enough,
we have to have modifiers. Yeah.
We've also got this thing, that changes how many numbers down the list it jumps each time.
Okay.
So stone is the number of places we jump down the list each time. And very few things in the game actually change that. One of them is first of all, it starts at 1. When you do the squats mini game, it changes to 33. When you do the elevator, it changes every single floor. And then after that, though, it doesn't change again, I don't think, until you go to Bone Village the first time. Again, after Demon's Gate, 3.5 hours into the run, about halfway. When you talk to the guy to find the lunar harp, you go to Bone Village, there's a guy you talk to start a mini game where like you have to dig in a certain spot to get a treasure. When you clear the final text box of his dialogue about the digging mini game, it sets a new stone based on your in-game time. So it like takes your in-game timer. I think it mods that by 16 and then multiplies it by 16, adds 1 and gives you a new stone. I think that's how it works. I'm not exactly positive about that, but it changes it at that point. That's the point. So the reason that we call it stone in the first place, I'm almost sure Brutal is the one that came up with that name, is because it's set in stone, is the idea.
Okay.
That's why. Like you set it right there. It's set in stone. It doesn't change. That's what it's going to be for the rest of the run. Because just nothing else for the rest of the run until Final Descent actually changes it.
It's monosyllabic, and if he's live, that makes sense for the sake of brevity.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, right. That's why I'm not calling it your incrementer every time.
Yeah.
So you're
speed running the fucking English language.
Your field RNG list incrementer.
Yeah.
So what was I getting at? I was saying, then way later in the run, there is a spot when you go pick up Bugenhagen to bring him over to the ancient city.
That's the general of Soldier, right?
No, Bugenhagen is Nanaki or Red 13's grandpa.
Oh, yeah, okay.
In
Cosmo Canyon. Yeah, okay, got it.
Yeah. So way later in the game, you go pick up Bugenhagen, you bring him to the city of the ancients, and they and that's where like you find out that that Eris's spoilers, Eris's
is an ancient
thing was white materia, right? It was holy white materia was in her hair. And then when Sephiroth stabbed her, that's what fell into the pond.
Yeah.
And then you find out some stuff about her, right? So when you go and pick up Bugenhagen, this is going to be one of the weirdest things you ever heard about this game. When you go to pick up Bugenhagen, just before you go into the observatory, the last field, there is this weather vane that swings. All right. It's just a weather vane
in the tower. Like it's on the side of his tower, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It swings, and every time it swings, it waits a random amount of time before it swings again. Okay? Yeah, just an innocuous little weather vane.
Wow.
However, the way it's programmed, it asks for a random number, and then it asks if the random number is between 0 and 3. And it behaves differently depending on whether it landed on 0, 1, 2, or 3.
You have to wonder if, like, when the game was being programmed, if these were consequences of the game's programming, or if they were intended visual cues. That's crazy.
There's like no fucking way that this was intended, I think. But let me tell you. Normally, if you want to so this tell me, this game is set up with a system where you can call a random number and you receive a random number between 0 and 255, but you want a random number between 0 and 4. From 0 to 3, I should say. What do you do? You mod it by 4. Right?
Yeah.
Random number, mod 4. Look at the least significant 2 bits. There's your random number between 0 and 4.
You're dividing by 4, right?
Divide by 4, return the remainder.
Okay, yeah, return the remainder. Okay.
So, but that's normally what you would do. But for some fucking reason, this weather vane, it grabs a random number. It asks if it is specifically 0, 1, 2, or 3. And then there's 251 more values that it could be. And if it's one of those, It just loops and it gets another random number. And
Oh.
it keeps getting random numbers until it gets 0, 1, 2, or 3.
So you're having to stare at this piece of shit until you see a predictable pattern?
Yes.
God damn.
Because well, I mean, you're only going to see the result. You only see the 0, 1, 2, or 3 when it happens.
Oh, okay. So there's only one of 4 possibilities that this weather vane could be pointed or something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
But normally that wouldn't be helpful because it would just mod it by 4, and we don't know which one of the 64 different values that it landed on, right? We see that it does the 3 pattern,
Yeah.
but that could be one of 64
One of
different list
64. Okay.
values
Yep.
if it just modded 4. But no. It fucking waited and looped the script until it hit 3 specifically.
So you've got to determine whether or not your run is a Slytherin or a Hufflepuff.
Well, so this is the other thing about it is, remember I said way back when in Bone Village, stone gets set, right?
Mhm.
And it gets set based on your IGT. So when you enter Bone Village the first time, 3.5 hours into the run, you enter at a certain in-game time. You look at your seconds digit and you want it to be 12, 28, 44, or 56. One of those 4 values will get you the stone value that we want. Because then, hours later in the run now, because we know what the incrementer is, that means that in the list of random numbers, we know what order we're going to hit 0, 1, 2, and 3 are. You follow?
Kind of. Like it would be 0134 or 0214 or
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we know how much it's incrementing
So
by
you're following
each time.
a blink pattern almost.
Yeah, so basically what happens is the weather vane swings and then it rests for a random amount of time, right?
Okay.
But based on how long it rests for, we know what list value we're on, and we want a specific one. We want the one that will cause it to sit in time for like it's like 300 frames or something it sits for. But there's also a spinning satellite dish, which is very nice for counting. So basically what we want, we sit there and we look at the weather vane. When the weather vane stops, we start counting the satellite spins. And if it spins around 3 times before the weather vane spins again, go, you're on the correct value. You can leave, right? If it only gets around 2.5 times and goes again.
Can you imagine living in a world where if you saw one event daily happen in a certain sequence of events, you could predict the outcome of the rest of your day? Could you imagine? I'm sorry to like derail you like that, but like it's amazing to me how a game programmed in, what is this, 1997? I think?
Yeah.
1998 has these like obscure, like, you know, memory changing values change how the game affects like you as the player, but like you know, without doing all this deep delving into the programming and the science of probability and what's happening here, you'd have no correlation to what you're seeing on the screen. There's so much data being streamed at you that makes, like, if you knew how to interpret it, you could, you know, get a perfect run. But holy shit, like, the fact that people have uncovered that these things can even have any significance at all is really impressive to me.
Yeah. So, anyway, the reason that you do this with the weather vane is because you already set your stone. It's set in stone. And then now you know that your list is at this specific value. The reason that the powers that be said that you put it at this point is because then if you do everything else in the game optimally, as in you go to City of the Ancients with Bugenhagen and you move through in this exact precise way, not technically perfectly optimal. There's one spot where you need to purposely waste a couple frames, but we won't talk about that. Besides that, if you do everything else like perfectly optimally, what ends up happening is when you land at the final descent at the very end of the game, you should get there in this window of RNG that will give you 0 encounters in the final descent. There's like a window, right? Where because of where your stone is and because of where your list is, they've determined that the next several spots on list is going to result in a 0 encounter final descent. So it's this nice wide gap of time that you have to get there. And so that moment, that generous gap was basically like offset, recursively offset to figure out where do we need, the weather vane. With the weather vane we can control list. So where do we need to set it in order to then have all of this other stuff end up lining up to land on that gap? And so my whole point talking about Final Descent Manip is that it used to be a thing where you counted a visual cue similar to what we're doing with the waterfall now, but it has later been something that is purely in game, just looking at shit. You
Like the
don't have to
stone
use, yeah,
value.
you don't got to use a spreadsheet. You don't gotta you don't got to use a tool or a script. Instead, it is just you enter Bone Village on these in-game times, you wait for the satellite to spin 3 times, and then you play optimally. And boom, you've got 0 encounter final descent.
Three
It's
times
super
specifically because like does 3 spins equal 60 hertz or?
it's because that means that list landed on the value that has it wait for that many frames, and that's the list value that you want.
Oh, so
Ye
it's like the 3 spins is developed specifically because of that kind of situation in that point in time in the game.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's like super elegant now where it's all in game, and you just observe things in the game. And honestly, I wish Elevator was like that too, and maybe it will be someday. Actually, it kind of used to be. There's another method to the Elevator that Hype Ghost and Luzbel, and I hope I'm not missing someone else who deserves credit, but they actually, before this whole spreadsheet and waterfall glow thing was developed by Brutal, what they do is after you buy the batteries and in Wall Market and you run up to where you climb the
To
wire,
the cables, yeah.
there's those 3 kids that run
Mhm.
over, there's 3 kids standing there. Before you run too close to them, they do an animation. The kid kind of swings his arms every once in a while, and those couple runners actually mapped out different arm swing patterns to mean different list values, and then they created manips off those.
This is what I'm
S
talking about though. Like do you think like man, I guess at a certain point, you can kind of map everything to a clock event into a game. But like, how many games nowadays can you actually look at and be like, this NPC did this behavior for like a half a second, and I can predict it from there what's going to happen within the next 5 minutes? Like,
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's definitely honestly, it's something it's one of the many, many things that draws me to retro games,
yeah, it's
is
like
the fact that
tied to the
somebody
memory
can
clock.
say, yes, someone can say, it's this memory address that flips this bit on and off, and that's what makes this happen? And it's like, awesome. That's really interesting.
Because like,
Yeah.
I mean, like with the stone value that you mentioned, obviously that's a speedrunner metric, but like that and just getting things down. I mean, the fact that there's a science to getting things to frame perfect levels to accurately predict the outcome events in this game is impressive to me. That I don't know that like programming with video games nowadays can like. I mean, like you can run into an area, you can attack a certain creature at a certain time. Does that mean like? I'm wondering how much of this carries over to modern game development. Like, is there a certain level of predictability that you can establish based off of just a few visual input from the very get-go? It's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know that modern games can be speedrun like retro games are currently. And at least I don't think the science would be the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not really sure because I don't really have a lot of experience with speedrunning of modern games. Beside, I've watched like some Dark Souls runs, and that's more about like
Mhm.
bug exploits,
Yeah.
where when you hear people talk about it, they're not talking about memory addresses and stuff. They're talking about like, oh, the game's fucked, and so when you do this sequence of inputs, it just makes a mistake, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess that's
Um,
another thing I didn't think about too. It's there's the other a whole dimension of this is a 3D game. There is a whole other dimension of programming
yeah.
in the making here. So yeah, there's a
A
lot more variables, I would guess.
Yeah. So one thing, one last thing to mention is that like I at the very end there I mentioned the arm swing patterns thing. Very interesting and important to note that like Luzbel has been doing elevator manip on PlayStation for a while now. He's already been doing it using the arm swing method. From what I understand, the issue with it is that because you cannot control your list value, leading up to that part of the game, y you might just not get a good arm swing, you know?
Hmm.
Like, you might get up there and then they just don't do the thing that you want them to do, you know? And you're just like and you're standing there for a minute before you see the recognizable thing, you know? And that sucks, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kinda why, like, the spreadsheet method has been developed. It's the opposite of FD manip, which was you count the sparks using a tool that tells you what to do, and it just does a best effort, right? But then the in-game visual cue thing ends up being a perfect final descent every time. I love that, you know? Personally, I will say completely frankly, I don't like the idea of watching a playback of a cutscene in 25% speed so I can input numbers into a spreadsheet
While
that
you're on the
tells
run.
me yeah, that tells me what value I'm on, you know? I do think that that is less cool.
It's a little bit
Um,
extra anyway because it's like you're relying on more than your skill with the game to advance
yeah.
the game.
Yep, and so, like, I'm sure there are a lot of people that are gonna be against it, and, like, people listening to the podcast, maybe you think it sounds stupid, and, the thing is, I kind of agree that, like, I I l I'm I wanna be careful with exactly what I say here because what I'm saying is I really, really appreciate the work that has been done on the spreadsheet. I think it's really cool. I'm going to use it. It's very interesting and cool, but I would rather use something that was purely in-game,
Visual
if
based.
that were possible, yeah.
Yeah.
Only problem is that arm swings can kill the run. They're less good, you know? It's a less fast method, you know?
I think in general, like, I, there's different kinds of runs. Obviously, there's the any percent, and then there's the glitchless. All that. You know this, but like to get it to the point where Final Fantasy VII is specifically, I think you almost have to understand and utilize the tools of the science that has been developed to actually run the game. Because if you're not on an equal playing field with other speedrunners.
Mhm.
At least in that category that you're speedrunning. But my thinking is that if I can get to where the next human is using human developed techniques, who cares if it's a spreadsheet? It's like that was developed using like you've mentioned Python. Like you used Python, a modern language that you learned to manipulate a game that you know how to play. It's like it's
Yeah.
like not hacking. It's just like you're using a tool that other people don't have, but those people don't. It's not like those people don't have access to learning Python. Well,
Totally.
maybe there's a certain extent to that, but
Yeah, and no one's being secretive about these techniques either, you know? The
mhm.
the spreadsheet that Brutal made is, people well, I think he's touching some stuff up before it's like a super publicly available, but like we who are in the circle and like and working on it, we all have access to it, right? As far
Yeah.
as, my script, I want to touch it up a little bit more, but I'm gonna release the results of it to everybody, you know?
And even to the
Uh,
to the writer's credit of for the programming of even a spreadsheet, it's like sharing that kind of only helps in that situation because other
mhm,
speedrunners are going to report back if there's problems.
yeah. So also, there is one more funny note about all of this. is all of the spreadsheets looking at and waterfall sparkles and list value and shit. All of that does not apply to the PC version.
Oh,
Now the PC version has list, it has stone, but for the PC version, they've actually been doing elevator manip for a super long time, and it's super easy because list. The thing is, if you hard reset your game and then load your save file, your list is 0. It
oh,
just it loads as 0. And on PC, it does not take very long to quit the game and reopen it because it's on PC. It's bing bang boom. It's real quick.
it's like
It
Doom. You
takes
can
a
hotkey F5.
yeah, it takes a lot longer, however, to hard reset a PlayStation. So on PC, the strat is to just get up to the elevator as quick as you can, save the game, hard reset, go into the elevator, and do the 0 list manip. You know,
That's a separate category, though. Obviously,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. PC is a different category. It's just a funny thing to note that like this whole dumb shit about the spreadsheet and tracking your list value and all this dumb shit is all just because it takes too long to reboot a PlayStation.
I didn't think about that. So you this is literally just disk read time accounted for, I guess.
Yep.
Crazy.
Well, there you go.
Actually, hang on.
Uh-huh.
I was going to ask, does that strat apply to even like a specific hardware revision of PlayStation or even PlayStation 2?
Oh yeah, I mean all of them will take too long to reboot, you know.
Well,
Because
okay, yeah.
yeah,
So, but
because like you got to watch the whole a PlayStation opening, then it does the Square Enix, and then
okay.
it does the credits thing, and then it does the main menu, and then it takes a minute for the bar to fill up to load your memory card, you know, like it all takes forever. PC, you kind of skip through it much, much, much faster.
Yeah, I got you. I was thinking in terms of like if disk read speed was actually accounted for in the final runs times and all that shit.
So the way that disk read speed is accounted for is that everybody runs on a 90K PS2 or a 79K, which is a certain model of the PlayStation 2 Slim. It loads discs
Yeah.
the fastest.
I think I saw that, and I want to say, damn, dude, I think I saw someone post recently on Twitter that the price of PS2 Slims on eBay have kind of just shot up $100 because of speedrunning.
Really? I just bought a 90. So I started speedrunning FF7 in September. I think I bought a 90K PS2 in like October or November. And it was like I think it was like $60.
I want to say it was honestly a matter of 2 to 3 months ago. So
Oh
it might have been
wow.
like January when I saw someone report that this could just be like one eBay rogue selling listing, who knows, but like this they were saying essentially like they posted like a screenshot of a listing of eBay with a few different slim model PS2s. Like they were just like, whoa, what happened to what price wise, what happened? Why are these so much more expensive? And people are like, yeah, they're flying off the shelves because they read discs the fastest or whatever. But me personally, having worked on them, the Slims are 1,000% easier to work on. So I love them for that. But they also lack first of all, they lack the hard drive capability of the fat PS2. But they also don't. They have like the PS1 hardware on the chip anymore. So
Yeah.
with a slim PS2, you're technically emulating your PS1
Very, very technically, yes.
Yeah.
But it's official, right? It's
sanctioned for sure.
Yeah.
It's just like a matter of I was wondering why the prices were so different, because my thinking is if you want a PS2, for the longest time people were always wanting the fat PS2 because of A, the hard drive, but B, because it just played every PlayStation disc at the time. With no muss, no fuss. So, and also the charger was internal. The power supply is internal, so you don't have all the charger woes that the Slim model has.
The 90K, it's actually internal on also.
Oh, I've heard that. Yeah, actually, you're right. They finally made it internal. Was it the last revision?
Yep. Yeah, the 90K, it's internal. It even has the network adapter in it as well and stuff.
I bet you that's the one that's expensive now. Then.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's the one that generally loads the games the fastest for PS1. You have to turn it on. When you go when you turn it on, you hit triangle on browser to go into the options, and then triangle again to go into like the PlayStation drivers, and you got to change disk speed to fast. And you
Whoa.
have to do it every time because it defaults to normal every time.
It saves that on a ROM chip or something.
Yeah, I think the reason is because some games are technically not compatible with the fast disk load speeds,
Okay.
and so they didn't want people to like set it and forget it and then think that their PlayStation was broken.
That makes
Is what
perfect
I
sense. Yeah.
imagine is yeah. But that's crazy to hear because yeah, this one was only like $60. It was console only though, right? Because I didn't need another power cable and
Cables, yeah.
video cable and shit like that because I'm just getting so maybe that was part of it, but
Yeah.
yeah, interesting. Well, I spent all of my time that I was gonna talk about Alundra talking about Final Fantasy VII again.
That's
But
okay. I was hoping you'd go into it more because I know you're passionate about that, and it's cool to see you progressing like you have been. Like your times for Final Fantasy VII have been insane.
yeah, I love this speed run, man. It's so great.
Dude, I haven't played the game. Like legit played the game. Like I've given it an attempt on my PS3 like in maybe 2014, 2015. But it didn't JRPGs in my attention span nowadays, But like the last time I beat the game, I was a kid. I was like 11. So
yeah.
like the fact that you can talk about it speedrunning now, and I can recall so much of it from even not remembering half the game, it's cool to hear your passion about it.
Yeah. I
can
love
recall it and talk about it. It's cool.
And so I'll talk about Alundra pretty soon. You know what? It's probably better that I talk about that later anyway, because one reason that I wanted to talk about games on this podcast is that a lot of the time I beat a game and I want to do like a review of it,
Yeah.
But then instead what keeps happening is I talk about a game after I've played it like twice, right? And then I don't want to bring it back up, later. So yeah, then I end up not really having that necessary like review portion.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I beat Nocturne. Remember when I talked about Nocturne months and months ago? I beat it. It was awesome. 10 out of 10. I recommend it. You should play it. There you go.
You asked me a question. Do I remember when you talked about Nocturne? The answer is no. What is this game about, really quick? High level recap?
It's the JRPG where like you negotiate with demons and get them in your party.
Wait. We're talking about Shin Megami Tensei.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. SMT4?
3. Nocturne.
3. Okay, yeah, never mind. I know what you're talking about now. Okay, I thought Nocturne was like a standalone title. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I beat it. It was great.
Yeah, well, fuck yeah. Shin Megami Tensei, just like, the more I see of the demons, the more I'm impressed anyway. So I believe you.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for me. Anything else from you?
Nah, I'll figure more about Vermintide, see how the high level gameplay is down in the later levels, if I can get my level up there, because mostly I've been grinding Sea of Thieves stuff lately before that, so I burnt out on Sea of Thieves once I got that shit, and I've just been non-stop Vermintide, so I'll see if I can get more on that.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for chatting. Thanks everybody for listening also. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, y'all. Have a good night. See you later. Thanks for listening.